The man makes a gyroscope spin on the table, then he picks up a gun. If it keeps spinning, he's living in a dream. He shoots himself back to reality. Only when the gyroscope stops spinning will he be sure he's living in the real world. This is the wonderful suspense movie Inception. This man's name is David. David has a special profession called a dream thief. His job is to infiltrate the dreams of his targets and steal their deepest secrets. This time, his target is an Asian man. His name is Jack, the second richest man in the world. They are now in Jack's dream. Although Jack doesn't know it, he's still very alert in the dream world. David tried everything to get him to reveal his trade secrets, but Jack still didn't tell him the secret. David took the risk of sneaking into Jack's consciousness warehouse and found a safe. It contained all of Jack's secrets, but no sooner had he gotten his hands on the secrets than Jack broke in. He took David's comrade and threatened him to surrender her. It turns out Jack knew it was a dream. She threatened David to tell him who was behind it. Although you don't die in a dream, the bullets hurt. In order not to let his partner continue to be tortured, David grabbed a weapon and sent his teammate back to reality with one shot. But once the dream stealer dies, the dream world will collapse too. What's even more devastating to David is, the secrets Jack kept in the safe were actually fake. The partner came back to reality to give Jack a higher dose of tranquilizer. He asked his assistant to wake David up, but the partner didn't realize Jack was awake. The moment David fell into the water, his dream world was suddenly flooded. He struggled to wake up from reality and took control of Jack, who was about to rebel. He wanted to threaten Jack with force to reveal the secret, but Jack didn't say a word. David was so anxious that he pushed Jack down and tried to shoot him. But this action made his plot to be discovered again, because Jack knew that the carpet in the house was woolen, but the carpet under his feet was made of cotton. This proves that they're not back in reality at all. They're still in a dream. Jack, feeling that he could not die in his dream, refused to reveal his secret. David also suffered the first defeat of his career. The dream thieves awoke in a train, while Jack is still asleep. They pack their bags and run, but the waking Jack had already identified the dream thieves as his targets. He found David and gave him an unprecedented mission. The mission was to enter the dreams of the world's richest man and plant an idea in his head, an idea to give away all his wealth. David dismissed him as a psychopath and turned to leave, but the man stopped David. He promised David that if he completed the mission, he would be exonerated and allowed to return home to his children. David was impressed and decided to take on this very difficult mission. The first thing he had to do was find someone. After all, it takes at least 4 layers of dreams to implant a person's thoughts. The previous dream builder couldn't even grasp 2 layers, and he turned a wool blanket into a cotton blanket. So David returned to Harvard this time. Through his advisor's recommendation, he found a girl. This girl has a great talent for architecture. She designed a maze in 30 seconds, but his boss mocked her mercilessly. The girl, who was trying to save face with her boss, was no longer soft. She just drew the most difficult maze. This time her boss, David, finally recognizes her talent. Next, he takes Lisa to an island and introduces her to a special profession, Dream Stealer. It's a job that involves sneaking into a target's dreams and stealing some of the deepest secrets of their minds. Lisa's job is to create scenarios in their dreams. For example, the restaurant they're in now, the coffee on the table, and all the fruits on the street. These are all scenes designed by David in his dream. That's right, they're in the girl's dream, but apparently Lisa hadn't accepted that she was living in a dream. It turns out that not only do you feel pain in a dream, but time slows down 20 times. They talked for over an hour in the dream, but only 5 minutes passed in reality. In order for Lisa to practice dream building, they went back to the dream world again. David warned her to be careful of pedestrians on the side of the road. These people are projections of her subconscious. If Lisa builds a scene that's too far from reality, like this building that flies around like a folded cake, once it appears, then her subconscious will know she's dreaming. The projected passersby will attack Lisa as an intruder. Since the subconscious can't be controlled by the subjective, the scene the girl builds must be realistic enough. But David's persuasion was useless. Lisa, who was building a dream for the first time, was having more and more fun. David's subconscious finally began to riot. Lisa saw the woman coming toward her with a knife. And in the dream, death wakes up early. If you don't want to wake up from death, you have to wait for a set period of time. In addition to that, falling in reality also wakes them up early. And there's only one way they can tell the difference between reality and dreams, and that's by carrying a totem. For example, David's totem is a gyroscope. If it's in a dream, the gyroscope keeps spinning. Only in reality will it stop spinning. After the rules of the dream world were explained clearly, David started to take assignments. His client was an Asian man. The man's name is Jack. His target was Tony, the son of a rich man. Tony's father is about to die of an illness. He wants to pass the company to his son, and Jack was afraid of the power of the other company. So he asked David to infiltrate Tony's dreams and plant an idea in Tony's head, an idea to dismantle his father's company. But it's extremely difficult to implant such an idea in the dream world. Let's say you're a kid who doesn't like to study, and I come into your dream and tell you to study hard. When you wake up, you'll probably say I'm sick. So to implant the idea, you need to construct at least 3 layers of dreams, and tell you in the 3rd layer that if you don't study hard, you'll become a hobo. That's how the idea of studying well can be embedded into your soul. But because the triple dream is so unstable, they have to use a strong tranquilizer. So David's next teammate was a pharmacist. Their current team consists of 5 people. Lisa was a dream builder, a pharmacist with a full beard, plus Tom, the top hitter. And then there was David, a repeat fraudster, and his partner, John, and the inexperienced Jack had to have a dream experience. Jack's research showed that Tony would be on a plane back to El Dorado tomorrow afternoon, so Jack went so far as to buy the entire airline. The dream-stealing gang managed to reach Tony. David took out a tranquilizer and pretended to talk to Tony. When he relaxed, he drugged his drink. Tony soon fell into a deep sleep. They have 10 hours from now. As the stewardess activates the device, we've come to the first dream. It's raining heavily because the pharmacist forgot to use the restroom before going to bed. Then they hijacked a cab and picked up Tony, who was about to take a cab. Tom and Jack acted as kidnappers and took Tony hostage. David and Lisa are backing him up, but a train that shouldn't have been there suddenly crashed out. Remember this train? It's important that he's in the back, because the train wasn't part of the girls' plan. Only David knew that the train was a projection of his subconscious, and since the train's appearance is so implausible, plus Tony is trained to prevent burglary dreams, so Tony's subconscious security system is very strong. Jack was wounded in the shootout. Everyone gathered at the abandoned warehouse. David looks at the badly wounded Jack and starts blaming his partner for not investigating Tony's special training. Tom advised him to calm down. After all, if you die in a dream, you can come back to reality. But this time, the situation was completely different because they had taken a lot of tranquilizers. If you die in a dream, you don't wake up at all. Once dead, they will fall into the 4th level of the dream world, Endless Abyss. Everyone started blaming each other because Tony's subconscious bodyguard was too strong, and they were set on the plane for a full 10 hours, so they'll be in the first dream for at least a week. By then everyone will be killed. All we can do now is finish the mission as soon as possible. They posed as kidnappers and asked Tony for the combination to his father's safe. He said it contained the will his father left him. That's the first idea the bandits planted in his head. Tony was confused. He had no idea that his father had left him a will, let alone the combination to the so-called safe. But under the threat of the kidnappers, he could only reveal the last 6 digits of his ID. The first step has just been completed, but the bodyguards have already surrounded the place. In order to enter Tony's second dream, the pharmacist stayed in the first dream as a driver to make a mad escape. The others took Tony to the next level to continue the mission. The second dream is in a bar. David found Tony and told him that he was in his dream, and he's his dream bodyguard. Someone is trying to steal his father's will from him by stealing his dreams. No one around him could be trusted. Tony didn't trust David, because his father had a brain hemorrhage and didn't have time to leave him a will, but because the first dream was swinging so wildly that it affected the second dream. Plus David was able to write out the last 6 digits of his ID card, and he therefore believed David's words. The subliminal bodyguards around him are no longer trusted by Tony either. He begins to investigate with David who the dream stealer behind the scenes is. He also wonders what his father's will is. Tom then used his disguise to become Tony's real uncle and cleverly fell into David's trap. He succeeded in making Tony believe that his uncle was the dream thief behind the scene. He asks his uncle why he came to steal the will from his dreams, but he tells him that his father's will is just an insult to Tony. The uncle is afraid that if Tony sees it, he'll dissolve their company in a fit of rage. Let's start with the relationship between Tony and his father. In reality, his father was very disappointed in Tony's abilities. Tony always knew that his father didn't like him, but he always respected and admired his father, so even if his father did insult him in his will, he wouldn't dissolve the company. So here's Tom's second thought for Tony. David told him that your uncle must be hiding a secret. He invites Tony to come with them into his uncle's dreams to find out what his father's real will really is. Tony agreed, but when he fell asleep, David took his men and infiltrated his third dream. John stayed in the second dream and prepared to wake the group. The third dream was an icy island. It's the deepest part of Tony's consciousness, his central nervous system, so any decision he makes here becomes his decision in reality. But at that moment, there was an accident in the first dream. The driver, the pharmacist, had no choice but to drive off the broken bridge. He woke everyone up beforehand, and the weightlessness of the fall will send everyone back to the previous dream. Since there's a time gap in each dream, it takes 10 seconds for the van to fall. There's only 3 minutes left in the second dream. There's only an hour left in the third dream. John in the second dream has to wake everyone up at the same time, and the fall of the van makes the second dream space weightless. He has to tie them all up with ropes and put them all in the elevator. David snipes the bodyguard in the third dream. He was able to get Tony to infiltrate the castle and show him a safe in the deepest part of his consciousness. Inside was the fake will that they had designed for him. Once Tony opens the safe, the mission will be accomplished. But then an outsider appeared behind him. He pulled out a gun and sent Tony straight into the abyss. This woman was a projection of David's subconscious. It was also his long-dead wife. Seeing that the mission had failed, the group was ready to retreat, but Lisa suggested that we could enter the fourth dream world to save Tony. And in the Infinity Gauntlet, time slows down 1,000 times. If they get lost here, they'll never get back, because the mission was so dangerous. Lisa had to ask David about a past he didn't want to talk about. It turned out that David and his wife had once explored the deepest part of the dream world but accidentally came to the fourth dream world, the Endless Abyss. Here they could build anything they liked. They lived like this for 50 years. This led to his wife becoming so entrenched in this place that she recognized it as reality. She even sealed her totem in the deepest recesses of her consciousness. David knew they had to get back to reality, so he dove into her consciousness and created a world where the present was false. They must die to return to reality, and so the two of them traveled back to reality by train. But the implanted idea was like a cancerous tumor on his wife. Even after returning to reality, she thought she was living in a dream, so in order to return to reality, she committed suicide by falling off a building in front of David. David had always felt guilty about that. That's why his wife and the train keep popping up in his subconscious. Lisa shot his wife to death and managed to send Tony back to the third dream. Tom tells him to open the safe, because the first dream is about to go overboard and lose weight. John in the second dream also caused weightlessness by setting off the elevator. So there's only 2 minutes left in the third dream. Tony finally enters the safe room. Inside is his dying father. His dying father was screaming disappointment before he died. Tony's heart was filled with sadness, but then his father suddenly said, Tony's heart was touched by his father. Tony's father had such high expectations of him. He had always been his father's pride. He opened the will and there was only a windmill. It was proof that his father loved and believed in him. Tony finally made up his mind. He wants to dissolve his father's company and start a new empire to honor his father. Tom timed it to detonate the bomb in the third dream. The first dream fell into the water. The second dream falls at the same time. The third dream world collapsed. The girl in the endless abyss also chose to fall away. Then she returned to the third dream. She returned to the second dream in the weightlessness of the explosion. She went back to the first dream with the weightlessness of the elevator. Everyone woke up in the ocean. Only David decided to stay in the infinite abyss to bring Jack back. Because Jack is dead. He's been in the infinite abyss for 50 years and has become an old man. He didn't dare to kill himself because he was convinced that he was living in reality. He didn't dare try until young David arrived. At the end of the story, David wakes up in the airplane, and Jack came back to life. Tony dissolves the company. Jack kept his promise to clear David of his wife's murder and bring him back to America to see the child he'd always wanted. David couldn't believe it. It was like a dream. He picked up a gyroscope and spun it. This time, he could finally see his child's face. And the gyroscope on the table became an unsolvable mystery in the history of cinema.